Welcome to the Sales Queen podcast, where we teach women how to turn their skills into sales and monetize their message so they can finally sell with the clarity, confidence, and certainty that they've always wanted to. No longer does the game of sales need to be an old boys club. It's time for you to sell like a queen. Well, welcome everybody to the Sales Queen podcast. I am here with Lauren Brollier Newton, and she is a phenomenal entrepreneur and coach and empowerment person, just like I am. So excited to have you here today, Lauren, and ready to get started.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Megan. I'm really excited to be here. And I love how this podcast is all about vulnerability and putting it all out on the table and helping people. So I'm ready to go, rolling up my sleeves and ready to go.
Love it. Well, let's dive right in. I would love for you to kind of start with your entrepreneurial origin story as far back as you'd like to go, because I think oftentimes for successful people like you, they might just follow you on social media and say, oh my gosh, she's made $2.8 million in her company. How can I relate to her? How could I ever do this? So why don't you kind of take us back to the beginning? And I'm excited to hear your story.
Yeah. So thanks for asking this question. So I'd like to tell you where I was. Like, this is almost exactly 4 weeks before I started my company. So my husband had just left me. I didn't know it at the time that he left, but he was living pretty much a double life, like for 7 years that we were together. And when I found out, I was so devastated just by the fact of like, yes, I was devastated by what he was doing and I was angry at him and all of the normal emotions. But what surprised me and what left me feeling even more devastated is I found myself realizing things about myself that this just sort of put a mirror in front of me. One of which was I had such low self-worth. And I never saw myself as a person with low self-worth because at work, I was really confident. I was a teacher, an elementary school teacher, and I had great relationships with families and kids and all that stuff. And so I always thought of myself as a confident person. But when my husband left, he gave me a list of all the qualities that a dream girl, his words, a dream girl would have that he felt like I didn't have. So he said, you're not smart enough, you're not fit enough, you don't make enough money, you're not outdoorsy enough. Just like a list of things. And I remember the night he left, I just laid awake, just like in a trauma state. Cause I was like, so shocked that I had only been married for a year. And so I was shocked that my whole life was collapsing in front of me. And I remember racking my brain, like going over the list of things that he said weren't good about me. And like part of the shock of that was realizing I 100% agreed with him. And I was just sitting there going like, how did I get to a place where this is my belief about myself? And so as traumatic as it was a lot of shame, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of feelings of how could you not know? And then really this deep personal inquiry and like, how have I come to this point where I believe these things about myself, that there is nothing good about me? I'm sitting there racking my brain going, yeah, there isn't anything good about me. And so 4 weeks before I started my business, it was Christmas time, 2017. And I was moving out of my house because here's my husband living a double life. I can't afford to keep this house on my own. I'm saying goodbye to my dogs who I couldn't keep, moving back in with my parents. And one of my best friends, Brina, came over to help me move. And I think it was the day before New Year's Eve, 2017. So I wake up and I'm like, oh, Brina's coming today. I better get my act together. And I'll never forget when she got to my house, she just looked at me because I'm like in my pajamas, totally greasy, hungover because I didn't know how to deal with my problems. And she walked in, she's like, dude, get it together. Like, we need to move you out of this house. And she realized I had like no boxes, no packing materials. I was just a mess. So she's like, let's go to Walmart. So now I'm in Walmart wearing pajamas. I'm that person. And I'm like just totally a mess. And I remember having this moment of serious paralysis. Like I'm in the aisles, I'm holding this like 3-pack of bubble wrap in my pajamas. And I just had a panic attack and I like started crying. And I just looked at Brina and I was like, could barely talk. And I just looked at her and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I do not want to do this. I do not want to lose my house. I don't want to lose my marriage. I don't like this. what am I doing? And in that moment, Brina was not sympathetic, but she was compassionate. In other words, she didn't like tell me she felt sorry for me or anything like that. She looked at me and I'm saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And she looked at me and she actually kind of yelled at me and she said, you have to do this. And she's pointed backwards and she's like, you don't want that life. You are so much better than that. And in that moment, I was like, okay, like I'm either going to sink or swim here. And I decided like, no, I do not want to be the person who 5 years, 10 years down the road is still blaming someone or still angry. Like I'm going to get it together. And so that was where I was exactly 4 weeks before I started this business. And what caused me to want to start the business is when you go through a traumatic experience like that, I think if you're open, I think a traumatic experience can do one of two things. It can ruin you. It can just completely destroy you, cause a lot of anger and, all of that, which it did to some extent. Or a traumatic experience can grow you beyond like what you ever thought you'd grow before if you're open to that. Yeah. And I was super open to that. I was like, I want everywhere this is supposed to take me. I'm trusting that this is for a higher purpose. And when I founded my company, it was a decision that some things I'd wanted to do for a really long time, including impacting people in a bigger way, that I was going to do that. So when I founded Soul Savvy, that's where I started. I literally founded it in my parents' basement with no money, $40,000 in credit card debt, and a dream.
Wow. So beautiful. So how long would you say that it took you to feel like a success? And what were, because you've made over $1 million, which is something that most people never have done. So how long did it take to become a success in your own brain, or you felt like it was there a moment? And then I also want to ask you, what were the major things that you learned between $0 and 100,000? Because that's kind of, oh my gosh, 6 figures. And then the difference between 6 and 7 figures for you. So when did you feel like a success? And then 6-figure and 7-figure lessons.
Yep. So when I founded my company, the reason I got the courage to do it is serendipitous. I don't believe in serendipity. I believe in a higher power. So I believe it was grace that brought me to this event. But about a month after my husband left, a friend brought me to a 3-day success event. And that's where I decided to start my business. And at the success event, the speaker taught vision. And she taught that, she said, it was Mary Morrissey who said it. She said, you can't get to your dream. You have to come from it. You can't get to your dream. You have to come from it. And then, so when you ask me this fabulous question about when did I feel like a success, I would say because I had that tool of living so deep into a vision where I was trained to see myself in the positions I wanted to be in and helping the people I wanted to help, I really started feeling like a success before any material success ever came, because I started to see myself differently. I started to speak to myself differently. And anytime, and this is what I think sometimes in personal development, I think sometimes people don't share enough about the rigor of like retraining yourself, but I was rigorous with my thinking. Anytime I would hear a thought about you're not good enough, you're going to go broke again, look at what you always do. Anytime I heard any of those thoughts, I interrupted those thoughts and I was like, that is not who I am anymore. No, this is where I'm going. And sometimes when you're in that process of like redoing, I guess you could say, your self-esteem, I mean, I had to sometimes 10,000 times a day stop the thoughts that said, this is never going to work for you. And so there was a rigor to that, but that's, I think, why I started feeling like a success very fast. Yeah. So that's what I would say for that. In terms of 0 to 100,000, was it, what did I learn from 0 to 100,000?
Yeah. Like what was the big lesson that you think got you from 0 to 100,000 or that you learned? And then what was the lesson or the thing that you implemented or learned that got you from 6 to 7 figures?
Yeah. So the big lesson for 0 to 6 figures, I have really discovered that God, the universe, if the word God doesn't land for you, moves with you in proportion to the boldness of your action.
Yes. Amen. 100%.
Yep. So it's like 0 to 100,000 was like really having to get past the terror barrier and just do the scary things. And one in particular was, and I think I had already made 100,000 by the time I realized this, but I hadn't like annualized that 100,000. So I think I didn't yet see six figure on my tax return when I learned this lesson, which was, I was holding events in a very small event space in Northern California. And I was dreaming of having an event in a ballroom, like a serious personal development event. And I kept delaying it. And delay, by the way, is one of the number one killer of dreams, because delay tricks your brain into thinking you're doing something, but you're really not doing anything. And so really sneaky. So I kept delaying moving to the ballroom because I kept saying, well, when I make this much money, I'll move to the ballroom. Or when I have this many clients, I'll move to the ballroom. And then I had a failure in the little room, like in the little tiny room that I was meeting in. All of a sudden, I only had 4 people coming, when my whole career I'd had 15, 20 people coming. And I knew by that point in my career, failure is feedback. So this is not something bad. This is truly something growing me to the next level. And so I started to work with that after that failure. And what I heard inside of myself was, see, Lauren, you can fail even in the room you don't want to be in. Then I was like, oh, okay. So my job here is to be bold and go to the ballroom before I have evidence that I can be successful in that ballroom. And I made peace with myself that I don't want to fail in the room I don't want to be in. If nobody shows up, at least I'll be in the ballroom delivering my talk where I want to be. Right. And it was a bold move, because to rent a hotel ballroom and feed people and stuff, it's like $10,000 minimum for that kind of an event. And I didn't have that at the time, but I did it anyway. And not 4 people showed up to that ballroom event. 128 people showed up to that ballroom event. Wow. And I know that's because I had to step into my greatness first before you get rewarded with greatness. It's like, my mentor would say, you can't walk up to a wood stove and say, I need you to show me the fire first before I'll give you the wood. Yeah. It's like, it doesn't work that way. So I had to like put the wood in the stove to get that fire to burn. So I would probably say that's my greatest lessons learned up to the 6-figure point, is you've got to be bolder than you've known yourself to be. Yeah. So 6 figures to 7 figures. Okay. So now Soul Savvy does more than 7 figures annually. And so I would say the greatest lesson there is systems. Like you're playing a different ball game now. And like, you can't just walk in like unprepared. Like that was the greatest lesson, is to have systems and structures in place, not just for myself, but that was, I mean, at 6 figures, I started hiring employees. And then at 7 figures, I had to realize, like, Lauren, you can no longer keep stuff in your head. Like, you just can't be like, oh, I arranged this payment plan with the client, but I didn't tell anybody else on my team. Like, it takes systems. So yeah, 6 to 7 figures for me was definitely about systems, and also about allowing myself to be supported by the really amazing people around me. My employees begged me for more responsibilities, and to let like, they would literally say, like, Lauren, you don't have to do this. We can help you. And it was tough. And it was fabulous to learn how to implement structure, but also to allow yourself to be supported so that you can really shine. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, other than the courage and the bravery to take bold, massive and perfect action, is a lot of like the language that we use in my company. What do you think was the kicker that made 128 people show up? I really believe that it was, and I know this is going to sound woo-woo, and I can tell you, like, the marketing things I did to get people in the room, but the truth is the marketing didn't change. Like, I was still doing this very similar marketing as I was in the small room. I was where I wanted to be. And when you're where you want to be, it's so much easier to stay motivated and inspired and to take that extra action step, that when you're in that play small phase where it's like, this is not really what I want, but this is what I think I can have. It was just so much easier to pound the pavement, knowing that I was thrilled about this event and the room we were going to be in and the food we were going to serve and how we were going to step it up for the people coming. Like, it just gave me that extra motivation to work an extra hour or make another call or show up bigger than I had before. So I think it's really important for us as entrepreneurs to look at, what am I doing because I think it's going to make me money, or because I think someone else has told me that? And what feels really in alignment with me? because there have been things that, you know, my coaches who I love have told me like, that's not going to work. And they work. And I think it's because my energy was 100% behind it. Whereas when I try to get should myself into doing something, it's a different result.
Yeah, absolutely. You've mentioned your mentors a little bit, and I definitely believe in the power of mentors for different phases of life, for different aspects of life, you know, whether it's your spiritual life versus your business life versus your relationships. So, and I know that you mentioned that you won an amazing award with Amy Porterfield. So who have been some of the biggest mentors in your life? And what are some of the things that you would think, if you're speaking to a new entrepreneur or a seasoned entrepreneur who's stuck at a certain level, what are the kinds of things that you should look for in a mentor, and what are some of the red flags, and then who has helped you on your personal journey?
Yeah. So the award actually came from Brave Thinking Institute, and I was featured by Amy Porterfield. I taught some of her clients how to do sales pages, which was super fun. And so I will say mentorship, I think at every level is so important, because when you're inside the frame, you can't see the picture. And so when you're just like chugging along alone, it's very, very challenging to see your own patterns, paradigms, ways of being. And sometimes just talking it out with someone gets it out of that frantic space that can be in our mind and into something, you know, much more expansive and flowing. So I would say in choosing a mentor, I think the most important thing, most important above all, is that that you can feel that they really care about you. Like that you're not just a number, that it's not something like that they really are passionate about helping you. I think that that's the most important thing. But I also am a big fan of not asking someone for directions who hasn't been where you're going.
Amen.
So you definitely want to have someone who's way ahead of you in the ball game, I think would be a great thing. And that they really care about you is the second thing. I've had lots of mentorship over the last 5 years. My closest mentor, highest advisor is Mary Morrissey, who founded Brave Thinking Institute. And I have had so many others. I have a coach, her name is Kirsten Wells, who is helping me with always the energetics of what I'm doing. And then I've had a lot where I invested and I learned a lot about strategy, but I didn't make a lifelong connection with that mentor. In other words, I got the strategy, I went, but it didn't have that deep emotional connection. And I think that me personally, like I want to feel emotionally connected to my mentors in a professional way, of course, but like I want to feel that connection and that closeness. And that's for the mentors that I feel that with. I've been with Mary for 5 years. I've done every program that she has because I know it works, but I also know that she's there in the background holding space for me. And so that's what I would look for personally is, there's a lot. I mean, in terms of building a business as an entrepreneur, there's 100 million different places that you could go to get mentorship. So look for what resonates. Don't force yourself into things that don't resonate.
Yeah. Okay. I want to ask that's so good. I want to ask a little bit of a tactical question, because this is a Sales Queen podcast and I'm obsessed with sales. So I love, this is a selfish question because I love seeing inside how other people make success, because there's a million different ways to do sales too. And I think, whether you want to call it high ticket sales or the online marketing world or, you know, coaching, whatever, we see seasons of things working, right? So for you, where do you see sales thriving right now in terms of, you know, you've got master classes, you've got webinars, you've got live launches, you've got VSLs, you've got sales calls. I know one thing that I'm working on in my businesses is my word for the year is simple, because my first business that I built was way too complicated and horizontal, where I was putting way too much of my personal time and attention, because I have so much heart naturally that I want to be that mentor, you know, that's like all in with people. So in your opinion, what's working in the sales world right now in terms of authentically serving clients, but also making sure that the owner doesn't have to be the one on all the sales calls and the one that, you know, really that strategy and that structure of growth? What do you think is working and where do you think we're headed?
Yeah. So I think for our company personally, we did used to have a very sales team sort of driven model. In the beginning, I was the sales team, and then we had a sales team. And then in 2021, we just saw that things that used to work in terms of our funnels and our sequences just weren't working anymore. And also didn't feel good to me because I actually personally, I'm not super interested in leading a sales team as much as I am serving. So what works for us is we have a variety of programs from our lowest price product is $39. Our highest ticket item is $35,000. And our high ticket programs actually sell more than our low ticket programs. So one of the things that I like cringe a little bit when I see coaches do, not because it's not a good model, but sometimes they're just confused about their own model, is they want to sell high ticket, but they say, I'm going to start with low ticket because that's going to be easier. And the truth is, it actually takes the same amount of effort to sell high ticket as it sells low ticket. So if your whole business model is going to be low ticket, then go for it. Build your email list, do all that stuff, run Facebook ads. But if your business model is going to be high ticket, sell high ticket, because getting a $97 buyer to a high ticket is just putting an extra step you really don't need in the process. So for us, I personally sell from the stage. And what I mean by sell from the stage is I sell live on webinars, I sell live on in-person events, and we have live virtual events 1 day in length. That's my on the business building side of my company. And what I mean by that is when I'm working with entrepreneurs and to build their business. And a 1 day virtual event that takes very little tech, we will do between 100 and 200,000 in revenue. Doing a high ticket sale on that 1 day event. So how do I not get overly involved in it? One is not doing things that are not required for me to do. So even for a beginning entrepreneur, if you can train a VA to do it just as well, a virtual assistant, do that so you can go coach. So like an hour of my time coaching is equivalent to $80,000 for my company. So if I can enroll someone in a high ticket program, I can serve 4 clients an hour, which will be an equivalent of $80,000. It's very well worth it to pay someone $25, $30, $40 an hour to fill that hour rather than me do it myself. So I think that is a way, but I also think you can still serve clients with your full heart and soul, not doing any one-to-one coaching as long as you don't promise something that you're not going to deliver. So being in integrity, my clients know what their program comes with, what I'm going to do. And I always deliver above and beyond, but I don't promise anything upfront that's not part of the program itself. So then I can deliver above and beyond, and they know what they're getting rather than doing it the opposite and trying to include everything in the program and then burning myself out.
Absolutely. Positively.
Does that answer? I don't know if I answered your
It does. No, I think that's where the world is going. So I train speakers. That's what I do for a living. And then I teach them the sales stuff on the back end. And that's exactly part of our model. And then we teach them, the offer framework and then how to get booked on stages, basically, because I think that, at the end of the day, we didn't get into entrepreneurship just to work 100 hours a week. And I just got married, 7 months ago. And so I had this big realization where I was like, you know what, with the way that my business was going at the time, if I had 2 babies at home, if I had 1 baby at home, like, I don't feel called to be a full-time stay-at-home mom, but like, I want to be there for, picking up my kid from school and do those things. And so I think that when you're vision driven, like you talked about, and you begin with the end in mind and you're like, what did I actually start this business for? I think people get right. Like, who do I want to serve? How do I want to help them? But I think that we go wrong, especially early entrepreneurs, if they don't have mentors, where they don't realize the monster that they're creating. Right. And so I think, I know that I can speak personally. If I could go back, 6 years when I started my business, I would never lose sight of that end in mind and make sure that I'm building something, with, the end in mind. And, the next thing I'd like to ask you about kind of along those lines is, what limiting beliefs do you feel like you had to knock down, or maybe sacred cows that you had to knock down? Because I know for me, one of those limiting beliefs was, well, I can't delegate, or my clients are going to be mad at me because I used to do one-on-one and now I'm stepping out of it. And they're going to notice this change, they won't be right. So how did you navigate transitions as you grew, finding limiting beliefs? And then also, how have you scaled, maybe a little bit more practical, with coaches underneath of you, or going one-to-many, or removing the one-to-one in the process? And how did you communicate that?
Yeah, great question. So all of the above, like, I heard all the same fears when I got out of one-to-one coaching and all of that. I think one of my favorite quotes is the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're facing limiting beliefs, the first thing I just ask myself is that true with a capital T? Like, is that really true about me or about what I'm doing? And what evidence do I have for that? So I think it's important that, like, when I left one-to-one coaching, one of the things I asked myself is there a way to massively serve people so that their lives are changing rapidly and not do it in a one-to-one setting? So it's looking at it and saying, where's the yes and in this? And I had those fears. Like, I went from one-to-one coaching and really small group coaching, like 4 to 5 people in a group, to a giant masterclass. Like, now we have like 110 people in this particular masterclass. And it was how that transition was about me saying, why do I think this is going to serve them better? Because I'm not going to put something in front of my clients just because I want to make more money or have more free time if I really don't think it's going to serve them. So it was like, how is this going to serve them better? And I started to look at the ways in which one-to-one or the small group wasn't serving as well as we could be serving, and then start putting things in place that didn't necessarily take more of my time, but putting things in place that would really serve their visions. And so it's asking about the yes and. How can I have this and this? And getting those ideas out on paper. And now I look at our programs and I see people moving way faster than some of my old school one-to-one clients moved, because they're in like this structure that's highly designed, high touch, like they still get all sorts of, things. It's just, it doesn't have to be me there all the time. So I think I really say for that one, it's leaning into the yes and communications wise, it was just that. It was it wasn't that long ago that I let go of all my one-to-one clients and invited them into a different program. And it was about saying, this is what I think is actually going to serve you better.
Yeah.
And here's why I think it's going to serve you better. And it 100% has. And, but like I said, you have to know and believe deeply that that's the truth. You can't just do it to alleviate your own stress. It's like, really put something in front of your clients that is going to help them. They actually don't care if it's one-to-one, group, one-to-many. They just want support. And if that support works, they're down for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Another little bit of a tactical question / mindset and belief. So I think another thing that people listening to the show have a lot of questions about, and I know that I had questions about, is that when you are, let's say your highest ticket program was 10K and now you're going to come out with your $36,000 program because your mentor advised you to, or you feel like it's the right time, or your calendar's full and you're like, okay, we got to open up another floor, or whatever. What would your advice be to people that maybe are dealing with a little bit of imposter syndrome, where they know they can get people results, but they want to keep growing and they want to be, like, I love how Amy Porterfield says, you need to be 10% ahead or have 10% edge, right, over people. So like, what was that balance like for you? Because we want to be growing as leaders. We want to be able to, hire our mentors, get better results, do these things. And kind of your clients are catching up, getting results as you're growing, right? So like, what's that process like for you? And how do you maintain feeling ahead, I guess? Does that make sense?
It does. And is your question like, how do you let the clients sort of catch up to where you're going?
It's like, I guess I'll just speak about for me. Like, I think that it's easy to compare yourself to other people, even though I'm like a really confident person. There, every once in a while you're trying to figure out your specific mark, your specific edge, or let's just say there's 2 people who run a marketing agency, right? Like, well, how are you going to get your clients better, Facebook ad results and those kinds of things? And so with like the online coaching world, it's a balance of like, obviously they have to take action. They're in control of their own mindset, but you're providing frameworks that you believe work. And then you're also changing with the times and the seasons, right? Like maybe you used to advise your clients to do strategy calls and now you're like, hey, we're doing master classes, we're doing live events, right? So you have to keep growing and adopting as a coach and a leader, and then maintaining the results that your clients are getting. So what was that process like? Because you're this amazing, phenomenal coach now, but back in 2017, you had to learn all this stuff at one point, right? And so there was a limitation of what you could teach your clients then versus what you can teach them now. So what's that growth been like for you while still maintaining amazing results for your clients?
Yeah, I think this is such a fantastic question. And I really think it comes back to the clients know I'm always for their greatest good. So they know I'm never going to put anything in front of them that I don't believe is the best thing for them. And I believe that any kind of coaching, like even if you're teaching like how to create Facebook ads, there needs to be some sort of mindset component, because the journey of an entrepreneur is one of lots of ups and downs and lots of failures. And that's good. Like you want to fail so you can get that feedback. So I think from the beginning, I understood that because of my own sort of origin story, and my clients were trained to have that really flexible thinking kind of from the start, which I didn't even realize I was doing. But when I look back, I really never had any issues with clients going up to the next level or with my price increases or things like that, because they could see that I was always moving forward. And when you're someone who maybe isn't always moving forward, when you're with a mentor who's so forward thinking, you're like, well, I want what that they have. So I'm trusting that. So I think it's a lot about training around mindset. And I think it's a lot about not sugarcoating, again, the rigor of how many changes happen in the life of an entrepreneur, and dreams change and people change and stuff gets messy and the universe really evolves through chaos. So I think that's a big part of it. But I also think that sometimes I watch with coaches, don't get your clients into your mess with you. In other words, when you're processing stuff and when you're making changes, don't be all over the place and like inviting the clients into that messiness. Like make announcements when the announcement is ready. Don't bring the drama to your clients. Be really professional of like, if I'm doing my own inner thing, the clients don't need to know that right now until it's ready, until I know it's going to help them. So it's like, don't be so all over the place. Keep that for you and your own coach to work through, and then bring it to the clients when it's ready. I also had a policy, and I still have this policy to this day, of grandfathering in my clients who've been with me for a long time. So that doesn't mean that they're like not paying anything, but it just means that I'm not going to say, now this program's worth 35,000, but you've been paying 15. So now it's going to be 20,000 more. I'm like, you can stay in, here's how I'd like to change it, but I do want you to know it's worth this. And because here's all the things we did to update it. And so I have that personal policy because I want to honor the people who've been with me for years and years and years. And that's up to every entrepreneur, but that's been something that I've really been proud of, that we've kept that policy. But we do let them know, like when we send them their contract, like this is the actual value of your program, but because you're grandfathered in, this is what you're paying for it. Just so it's like not a surprise should we ever change that policy in the future.
Yeah. Super cool. Super cool. I could talk to you for 5 hours. This is awesome. Okay. Couple more questions. So, as a coach, what do you feel like, in your opinion, is the secret sauce to getting clients results, as opposed to where people go wrong? You talked a little bit about like having a heart and a true care and a passion, but maybe a little bit more tactically.
Sure.
Is there a framework that you follow or that you learned? Or, I think about like, when I go into a program with a mentor, at first I'm all about the modules, right? And then sometimes I learn that like, I just need somebody to talk to. So what's kind of the balance? Is it community, right? Like what have you found is kind of the secret sauce in coaching that you feel like really has gotten clients the greatest results?
Okay, this is such a great question. I love this question. So I was trained in my coach certification training. I was given a program to coach. So I was given the program and I would coach people through that program. And I had a whole suite of programs that I could coach through. So as I was doing that, I was stepping into a system that had already been proven to create success for clients. So that was a huge benefit. So I didn't have to come up with it all on my own. But as I started coaching that program, the program works perfectly. And I love the program. It's fabulous. And I was looking for my own flavor to be in there. So it was really like working with a lot of clients through this already proven set program that I realized some other things that weren't in there that had really helped me. And that's when I started building my own programs. But it was after when I first built my own programs, I'd already probably served about 100 clients in like high level programs. So, I mean, some of my one-to-one clients, I'm working with an hour a week. We're going through emotions and strategies and whatever. And I started to notice myself having the same conversations over and over again. And I started to see what really worked over and over again. So one of the things I think for any kind of coach, I don't care if you're a marketing coach, a Facebook ads coach, a fitness coach, a real estate coach, one of the most important understandings as a coach that I think you need to have is how fear and your nervous system operate. Because one of the number one things you're going to be helping clients through any of those things, any of those types of coaching, is how to get past the fear, how to get past the discomfort. And most people think that fear is an indicator that they're not supposed to do something. It's like this omen, or it's a sign. Or so if you as a coach can really develop your understanding of the nervous system and how the brain forms new pathways, you can help your clients so much more, because when they come with something that's really bugging them, you can take it back to the science of what's happening with them. It even works great when a client is all gung-ho and then they call and they want to cancel their program. How do you walk them through that if you don't really know how fear operates and how the brain operates? It's really challenging to do that. So I would say for any kind of coach, get some kind of training on the mindset components and on fear, because once you can help a client get past fear, they're going to be unstoppable. And that really is the mindset part of it. But I think a lot of times in the strategy type coaching, we don't have it as much, and it still needs to be there. So when I did Amy Porterfield's momentum clients and I taught them how to do sales pages, like 60% of the training was on the mindset of when you're making a sales page and you start to have imposter syndrome and you start to get scared and you start to freak out because you don't know what to say. Like 40% of it was strategy and 60% of it was like, you're going to freak out when you get to this part. And it's okay, because that freak out's normal. Yeah. I just believe that should be in every part of coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely 100% agree. Absolutely. Okay. I have two more questions I would like to ask. And then I'll let you kind of share whatever else you feel like is on your heart. So number one, how do you fight against being all things to all people, let's say in the coaching world? Because I think what I have heard in terms of feedback of some other coaches is that maybe they lean a little bit heavier into mindset or sales or automation. And then when they get to, oh my gosh, now I have to teach my clients Facebook ads. Like, I don't want to be a Facebook ads expert. I want to be a sales expert, but they don't want to niche down to just being a sales expert, right? Like, they truly have a heart just for coaching. What have you found is a successful balance? Is that hiring out coaches to be your Facebook ads person on the group call once a week? Or what are some of the systems, or what advice would you have to people who do have a heart for coaching and maybe are still figuring out that niche, but want to confidently and authentically serve people in a way that can get results, even if they're not a master at everything?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'm a little bit on the, how would I say this? I just truly believe, kind of like going back to the idea of the ballroom was successful because I was in love with the ballroom. So I am only going to bring things in my coaching that I feel super resonant with. If I feel like we need additional training, like we have a program called 6-Figure Savvy, and it's a program that helps coaches, course creators build to their first 6 figures. And we have a lot of training in there on a lot of different topics because we've done it. But I bring in a sales coach, even though I think I'm excellent at sales. I bring in a sales coach to train. I bring in my husband, Cameron, to train on the technology piece of it. I bring in a Facebook expert if people are interested in that, because I just feel like I don't want to teach things I'm not passionate about. But I also feel like the whole thing with niching is, I just think you don't need to niche down that hard. I think the more authentic, unless you're only like building online with Facebook ads and you've got to get a tight, solid funnel. But I still think we've made $2.8 million and I literally never had a niche until like 5 months ago. That's why I really believe in that. The passion behind it, the drive behind it, the intention behind it is such a driver. And so I would say never put something in your program that you don't want to coach or teach, just because the world seems to be going that way. And what I say when I sell that program, 6-Figure Savvy, is I say, I just paint the barn red with it. It's like, just say, I'm not going to teach you how to DM because I don't like DMing. So if you're looking for a DM coach, not going to find it here, but here's what I will show you. I'll show you multiple pathways to build a coaching business, and you do the one that's right for you, and we'll build you to 6 figures. So if there's something that you feel like you're missing, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to sit there and teach strategies that I don't personally use, but I will give you a variety of ways. So like my marketing people sometimes get annoyed with me because I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to niche down that deep, but obviously it works to some extent. And if it causes me to make a little less revenue, I'm okay with it, because I really feel like the people who resonate me will enroll, and the people who don't will find a DM expert that does. I don't want them somewhere where they're not going to get what they want. So
Absolutely.
I don't know if that answers it or not.
No, it's so good. And I think like that's such a fallacy that you're unlocking, because as entrepreneurs, I always say, like, we're the shepherd and we have specific sheep. You have sheep that need to hear your voice. I have sheep that need to hear my voice, and if all the spots were already taken of sheep connected with shepherds, we wouldn't have so many hurting people in the world. We wouldn't have so many people that are experiencing mental illness because they hate their job and they're being mistreated, and they have a fire and a light on the inside of them and a message that needs to be heard, and I think what I love about entrepreneurs, and I'm just so honored by this conversation, is like, we get to, entrepreneurs are real people that probably went through some pain. And I believe that God developed a heart of love inside of us, where then we're like, oh my gosh, like, I have to serve people. I literally have to. And it's not just about us, but it's about literally their legacy that will be transformed through us operating authentically and using our voice and sharing our message, And so for anybody listening, maybe you're on the fence about taking the courageous next step to work with somebody. Let our lives be an example that you don't have to be perfect. Like, you literally just have to keep taking steps, like win the day, And so with that, I'd love to ask you my last question, which is just, can you tell us a little bit about just what you're working on, and also like your big why, like what drives you every day? Why do you love coaching? Why did you choose to do this with your life? And what are some exciting things that are coming up in your company that you can tell the world about?
Yeah. So thank you for this question. So my big why is, I absolutely believe every single person is put on this planet as a unique person that is meant and created to shine their light. And usually shining your light includes helping others in some way. And so when I was first getting divorced and going through all that trauma, I remember feeling so alone. Like, I must be the only person that has created this mess. And so my mission in the beginning was, if I could just help one other woman not feel the way that I'm feeling right now, I will feel successful. And what I've since evolved that to is, I believe, and our mission at Soul Savvy is that good people having great results will change the face of how this planet operates. And so I want to get good results in the hands of good people and ultimately change the face of this world for better. So my big dream and my big why is really to help as many people as I can. My goal is millions of people by the time I die. And I believe that will just change the face of this planet, where people are more loved and feel more seen and more understood. And the other thing is, we don't have to suffer. We don't have to suffer to be spiritual. We don't have to suffer to love God. We don't have to suffer to help others. No amount of suffering is going to lead to abundance. And so what we're working on at Soul Savvy is, I love your word about simplifying this year, because our Soul Savvy year is really about helping more people find us at our live events. And we have two. We have a live every other month training for coaches, consultants, and healers. And then we have a live, more mindset motivational event 3 times a year. So those are our big initiatives. And we do have a free gift that I think is in your program notes, that especially for entrepreneurs, if they're looking for some success secrets, can get connected with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Lauren, for sharing that. And yes, every bit of that will be in the show notes. So you guys can definitely take a click on that. I was looking at that right before our podcast, and there is such valuable information. So definitely take advantage of that. Thank you so much, Lauren, for just being so vulnerable and sharing your story and sharing your heart. You are clearly operating in your genius zone and operating in your purpose and your calling. And I just look forward to all the wonderful people, all the millions of people. I believe that, and I receive that for you, that you're going to help, just on their journey and to help create abundance and wealth and happiness and peace in their lives. So I really appreciate it. And it is such a blessing today to get to know you.
You too, Megan. Thank you so much for having me and for everything you do. This is seriously such a good podcast, and I can't wait for everyone to get their hands on it.